during college, I developed varicose veins. And I'm not talking about a cosmetic issue, but a varicose vein system that runs from my mid-thigh here right around to midway through my calf. And it's really painful and kind of uncomfortable, but mostly it just reminds me of a time in my life that I'm kind of ashamed of. So at this point, I want to find a way to do something about it. Unfortunately, the medical options that I've looked through just really don't fit with my value system of believing that I can heal naturally, or a lot of them have a lot of downtime. And I'm 22 years old, I love being active, I love being in nature, so none of those medical interventions really apply. So I'm gonna look into, this isn't gonna be a scientific approach, I'm gonna throw every therapeutic, beneficial, or nurturing technique or therapy that I can come up with at this problem and document it over the next few weeks of how I'd like to heal. But to start with, I'm going to tell you about how this problem emerged. So we'll begin doing some cold immersion, which is one of my favorite therapeutic exercises. And while I'm in the creek, I can describe how this happened. So, when I arrived at MIT, I joined the crew team because I was strong, I was fit, I loved doing sports during high school, and I really loved being in water. Speaking of which, it's time to get it down. System emerged during my sophomore year. I was rowing, I was trying to make the most out of MIT, which saying that MIT was my dream school is an absolute understatement. From the time when I was 13 to pretty much graduation from high school, my life completely revolved around getting to MIT and all that that would have offered. So I was completely shocked and a little bit unprepared when suddenly I was a student there. So I joined the crew team, I arrived at sophomore fall, which was the hardest year in my major, and kept on trying to do it all, get extra workouts in and everything, and really put everything I had into crew, into school, into time with my friends, discussing ideas. And over the course of that semester, this varicose vein system emerged. And I tried to ignore it, and if anyone commented on it, I would just dismiss it. But it kind of really bothered me. So between the fall semester and the spring semester, I quietly stopped getting the extra workouts in. And then I went on to discreetly quit crew between the summer between my sophomore year and my junior year. So looking back at that time, I was really being as far as college students go, I was being really, really responsible with my health. I mean, I ate quite healthy food, sure it was all from the dining hall and it wasn't organic, but for instance, after crew practice each day, my breakfast was sunflower butter mixed into oatmeal and with a side of a salad that was topped with all the spinach that was topped with goat cheese. And that was my usual, that was my regular, and on the whole, I was eating really well. Sure, maybe I wasn't sleeping as much as I should have, because I wanted to spend time with friends and engaging with ideas and opportunities there. But when I looked through the risk factors for varicose veins, I really didn't have that many of them. Like, sure, I'm female, and I was doing a lot of exercise, which could have contributed, and maybe genetics, but with the abruptness and the severity with which my varicose veins arrived, it really didn't make any sense. So part of what I've thought about is maybe there was a contribution to the spiritual emotional state I was in when those varicose veins emerged. Because I grew up in the Catholic faith, and it was a huge part of how I grew up. But as a student at MIT, I kind of dismissed aspects of my background, because it seemed like, yeah, I made it into MIT, so all the aspects that didn't involve me being at MIT were irrelevant. I looked around at the other students, and I think subconsciously I concluded that everything that I didn't have in common with a lot of the other MIT students was irrelevant, and that included my faith in God. And so Catholicism kind of became, or the Catholic faith that I grew up in, kind of just became an intellectual topic that I would debate with my close friends or in interfaith dialogue circles, but it wasn't like a core fundamental part of the way I lived or anything that gave me self-worth or resilience in these circumstances. Until things got really, really bad, I didn't turn back to going back to church or praying more regularly. So I think the spiritual component has definitely contributed to how quickly this basis emerged. So in these therapeutic practices, I want to make sure that I include the spiritual, emotional, and other ways of healing and nurturing myself. So as I go through this very non-scientific, just everything natural, therapeutic, beneficial that I could possibly throw at this problem, you're welcome to accept or neglect any of the aspects of the treatments or lifestyle practices that I'm going to adopt over the next few weeks. If it works, which I do believe it will, feel free to accept the techniques that you think help or think were nurturing and reject the other ones. I don't expect everyone to be jumping into freezing cold lakes. It's just something that I really enjoy that makes me feel alive. That being said, varicose veins is supposed to be an incurable condition. I sometimes break into tears when I go through the web forums or call to mind doctor's appointments I've had where they've said, there's no way to heal from this. Yes, you may be 22 years old, but this is just going to be something that you're going to live with for the rest of your life. So I'm going to take a holistic approach. I'm going to do everything in my power to get better, and having known that I've done my best to take care of myself, when I look down at my leg, I'll no longer have to feel ashamed of that time in my life where I didn't think that a huge dysfunction that was showing up in my vascular system was worth pausing and taking time to address. So that's going to be what I'm going to be up to. So I'm going to take one more plunge and head us off to figuring out what the next 2 weeks are going to look like. Time to go. It's definitely time to go.